Okay, in this last tutorial we are going to texture, light and render our chess sets. So I've created a file that's in front of me already, just labelled texture, light and render, because that's what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to use this to amalgamate all of the files that I have done before. Okay, so all of the files are already open for me, so I've got that ready. So I'm just going to need to go through them and copy and paste them in. Okay, so just have a look at the king. Right, might just rename some things as well so that I know what I will be looking at when I get them all together in the file. So to move them between one and another, you simply select what you've got. You can Command or Control C, depending on whether you're Windows or Mac, and then just go to the window, change to the one you want, and Command or Control V, and that will put your file in there. So I'm just going to put that in there and get that out of the way. Okay, then go to the bishop, which needs renaming as well. Okay, there we go. And to the rook, which I've already named, which is nice. So Command C, Command V, get the rook in there. Okay, now rename the pawn, Command C, V. And we need the queen, which needs renaming. And then I need the knight, which also needs renaming. Okay, so as you can see, I now have my chess pieces ready. There's a slight size difference when it comes to the knight model because I didn't use any reference when we're making the other one. We only used that image, so I'm just going to adjust the height of this. So just using the top-down view, I'm just going to overlay it so it's the right sort of place, and then I need to shrink it down. So using the scale, and then I need to adjust my tool from model mode to object mode. I just scale that down. You can see that it meets the right shape. Okay, so now if I can just move it back, move it so it's the right sort of height. Okay, there we have our knight model. You can see that we have a nice sort of selection of our stuff. Okay, and last but not least, we need the chessboard. So just go to the chessboard, Command C, and then Command V. There you go. Okay, so we've got quite a big difference between those two. We're going to need to increase the size. So what I'm going to do is, with the chessboard selected, I'm just going to scale that up so it meets the right sort of size. Okay, so using the top-down view again, just to make sure that I can marry up the height of the squares to the height of the, to the size of the individual pieces. Just going to move that down just so it's, so you can zoom in and make sure that it's just so it's on. There we go. Okay, so I'm happy relatively with the ratio between the squares and the size of the pieces. So now I'm just going to need to adjust the positions and make sure everything is where it needs to be. What I'll do is I'll also copy and paste a couple as well. So I've got the rook in, Command drag to copy, and I shall put the rook in its position over there. And then I've got the knight, and then I shall copy and paste that. I shall put that over there. Queen is in the way, so I shall just move the queen into its position. I shall put the king into his, which I can't find. There he is. And then put one bishop there, and Command drag to put the last bishop over there. Now I shall get the pawn object where it needs to be. Okay, and line it up. So there are a couple of things you can do to get the pawn objects all the way across. You could just continue to copy and paste so that I have a second one. Okay, but the other thing that you might be able to do or might want to do is use an instance if you've never done it. So I'm just going to delete that. So with the pawn, selected, you go up here to the top, you click and hold and create an instance. Now the instance object is a direct and live copy of whatever it is that you are or have made an instance of. So if I was to adjust the shape of that pawn object, then all of the pawn instances would change also. You could use a MoGraph cloner as well if you wanted to, you know, or you can say you can just copy and paste, but the more stuff you have on a screen like this, the more power hungry it gets and the slower your machine might end up. Okay, so I'm just going to have a little look, just going to sort of maybe adjust my king position there. There we go. And move the queen over a smidge and that bishop over a smidge as well. Okay, so there we have, if I just go to F1 again, we've got my 3D view. Okay, we have that piece set up nicely. Now, easiest thing to do in order to get these guys over the other side, okay, I can just select all of them. Okay, I need all of those pawn instances as well, so I'm just going to move the chessboard out of the way. So select all of those, and I'm just going to group them. Okay, and just label them chess pieces. Okay, now again, you could use a symmetry object if you wanted to have an exact clone, but in this instance I want a secondary copy. So Command C, Command V gets me a second copy. And I'm just going to rotate those around. So I've got my shift selected so that it will move in 10-degree increments. Oh, gone too far. Or you can use the coordinates manager, just put in 180, okay, and it will do it for you. Then I shall grab that and just move that down. Use the top view. Make sure things aren't wildly off. Just bring those forward a little bit. Okay, and go F1. Okay. So this gives us our chess pieces here already and set up and ready to be textured. Now, as you say, we've textured the board already, but I might just adjust that a little bit. So just with the redwood selected, okay, sorry, with the tag selected, I might just adjust that. I think it just repeats a little bit too much. So I'm just going to adjust those by using the slider and seeing where I start to feel that it looks a little bit more natural. Okay, around sort of there, and then maybe I'll adjust it lengthways so it doesn't look like it's too repeated in that sort of fashion. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay. Right, so let's start to texture our pieces then. So create a new material down the bottom left hand corner, just double click, okay, and that gives me a white texture, which is fine to start with. So double click that up. You can see that I've got a whitish colour. I'm happy with that. You may want to sort of make them a little bit more beige depending on the colours that you want, or you can go for some funky colours, but for this instance I'm just going to go sort of like the slightly off-white. You can see that it's not very shiny or reflective at the moment, so let's go to our reflectance tab and I'm going to adjust my specular. And the specular kind of controls how shiny something is. So if it's got a very small highlight, you can see that that changes, or if you want a really sort of wide thing like a rubber ball, it will add that. So that's how much light will spread across. So I'm just going to bring that down a little bit, maybe to about 25%. And you can see that the highlight works there, but I am going to increase the specular quite dramatically so that it is quite shiny. Now, it's quite nice having the two separate pieces here, because what it means is that I can apply texture directly onto one of those. So I'm going to apply it to my original ones. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's because I missed and put it on the chessboard. There we go. And you can see that instantly we have this nice sort of shiny material going across. Now, very easy what to do, just copy and paste. Okay, and I now have a second one, and with the second one selected, I can change its color down to black. Okay, and if I drag and drop that onto the second chess piece, okay, you can see that I now have those all nice and shiny. Okay, so if I just do a quick render, let's see how this looks. Oh, okay, so I've got some settings on that I need to turn off. Sorry, I've got those on by default, which we shall come to in a second. Okay, so not too bad. I'm relatively happy with those, but it gives us the basics of what's going on. So once again, I'm going to now put these into something that will allow me to see them in a better light, as it were, and sort of show off these things. Now, I'm going to select all of those, and I'm going to Alt-G again, and just rename it chessboard and pieces. Okay. Now in Cinema 4D, in its content browser, is a really nice feature, a really nice sort of thing that you can put in, which I already have here. So if you search for Lightbox, then it gives you this wonderful preset that allows you to import models and show them off with some really good lighting. So just double clicking that Lightbox will bring this up, and you've got a basic scene set up already with some things in it. I don't really want those test objects, so I'm just going to get rid of those and press delete. Now I'm just going to go back to my texture, light and render. Okay, and I'm going to copy those. So Command or Control C, and then go to my Lightbox file and paste in. Now I have a suspicion there will be a very large size difference. So if I just zoom out there, you can see that I might need to shrink my chessboard a little bit. So with the scale tool selected and that, I'm just going to change this to object mode. If you don't, what happens when we scale, some of the things don't to scale in the best sort of fashion. So everything sort of shrinks in its own right as opposed to shrinking as a whole. So just undo, change that to object mode, and then you see that it shrinks in a much easier fashion. I'm just going to use some of my different views to put them where this needs to be. There we go. So it's nicely in the middle now of that little light box. Okay, now if I just zoom in again, okay, I just need to adjust my view. I might just shrink it a little bit further. Okay, maybe rotate so that we've got a nice little angle going on there. Right. Just looking at the sides again, just want to make sure that it's not going to be hovering. Okay, but we'll see that a little bit later. Okay, see now if I render, you'll hopefully be able to see that it just sets the environment that little bit better so that we've got something for it to be in and on and around rather than the sort of black background that we had earlier. Now we could have created a floor and a sky and all of those sorts of things, but using something like this Lightbox really helps show off your models, certainly in a minute when we start adjusting some of the render textures, render settings, sorry. Okay, which will bring me to the next bit. So what I'm going to do, if I just bring up the editor settings, okay, then I have access to something in Cinema 4D's settings that will always make scenes look a lot more realistic. And that's over here in the effects, which you have a look are two things, which is ambient occlusion and global illumination. Okay, so I'm just going to add ambient occlusion, and I'm going to effect and add global illumination. So they do two different things. Ambient occlusion works out where light is going to be more difficult to bounce. So in crevices, in nooks and crannies and those sorts of things, in corners of buildings, corners of rooms, you know, sort of like brickwork, it works out where it will be a little bit darker, where there may be more sort of shadow, and it puts those in for you. Global illumination works out properly where light actually bounces. So it will use photons and it will bounce lights off things, and it will allow for a much more realistic looking light effect. So what you'll do is I will sit and I'll render, but you will notice that when I do render, okay, my render time will increase quite dramatically, but it was always worth the payoff. I'm just going to speed this up a little bit, I think, in the video. Okay, there we go. So that took nearly 2 minutes on my machine, and it allows us to see how our chessboard really looks. Now, I'm quite pleased with it, but I might make a few adjustments with regards to a few things. I think I want my chessboard themselves to be slightly more reflective. So I'm just going to adjust my angle, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see my chessboard. And then I'm going to double click my material for the checkerboard itself. Now, okay, so I haven't got very shiny texture on there, so I'm going to increase its sort of shininess so it's a little bit more, well, it's got that bit of a highlight. And then I'm going to add a reflectance channel. So if I just click add, for this instance, I think I'm going to go back to the old school and I'm going to use the legacy reflection. Now, as you can see, that gives you an awfully reflective surface, which you can change the strength here, and you can change how much it adds to this up here. So if I just lowered its reflection, you know, really sort of brought it down quite a lot, because I don't want it to be a mirror, I just want it to be slightly reflective. Okay, and then I'm going to just decrease how much it affects. You can see that that changes quite a lot. So I'm just going to bring that quite down to about, 20%. And then what I can do, save rendering the entire scene again, which, as you noted, takes some time. I'm going to use one of the render viewport options here, which is the render region. So just clicking and holding on the settings and going to render region allows you to draw a box. So I'm just going to draw a box on that bit, so because that's where I can see the majority of the chessboard. It just means that it allows you to kind of look at the textures a little bit faster without having to wait for the entire scene to render. Still going to take its time, but then I kind of want it to, just so I can make sure. Well, you can see that's got quite a lot of reflection in there. May have to lower that a little bit more. Okay, so that's not too bad. Just going to nip back in, and then I'm going to lower that reflection again and lower its effect that it has. And then just render region one more time. There we go. Yeah, so it's got a little bit of reflection in there, but it's not too much. Now, when your scene is lit properly, it allows you to sort of have a better look at the textures and things that we've created. So I might want to adjust some of those textures as well. So I've adjusted those two, which makes me happy, and maybe I'll just have a quick tweak of those actual chess piece textures as well. So just bringing that up. Okay, maybe I shall lower, maybe just increase the sort of specular width on that. Not by much. Let's just see what 40% would do. You can see that in the viewport it makes it quite shiny. So same sort of thing. Let's have a look. Let's see what it really does to those chess pieces. It might be that it's too much and that we'll have to lower it back down again. But texturing sometimes is a trial by error. It's starting to look a little bit sort of steely. Maybe I shall lower that. Maybe I should go the other way. Maybe I should bring it down to a sort of finer point. maybe I might actually add some reflection to them as well, so that they're a little bit more than just shiny, but they've got that little bit of reflection to them. So I shall add a similar sort of thing to the way that I did with the chessboard. Okay, so that's quite cool. So it kind of gives it that shiny look all the way around. So what I'm going to do, because I want to add this reflection to both of these, the white and the black, if I select both of them, okay, it means that I've got both materials selected, and I can add legacy reflection to the two, and you can see that it changes both of them. It does allow me to change two things at once, which I really do like in Cinema 4D. So I'm going to lower its reflection obviously quite dramatically. We don't want these to be mirrors, so I really am going to lower them quite a lot to only about 12–13%. And then its actual effect on the textures I'm going to bring down to about 10. And then let's do a complete render this time and see how it looks. Okay, so that took 3.5 minutes. You can see that the more reflections, the more sort of the things like that, and transparency, which we haven't got in this, that you add, the slower your render will be. But the more detail, the more quality you can get. I am not quite happy yet with that black sort of texture on there. The white one I am. So I'm just going to edit the black one individually. I think perhaps because it's a darker texture, the reflectance is a little bit overbearing. So I'm just going to lower that reflection strength even further. Okay, and then I'm going to look at how it blends in, and I'm just going to move that down to 5% this time. So just do another quick render region, and we shall have a look and see whether or not that works any better. Okay, yeah, so that's not quite as strong as it was before, which I quite like. So it gives a little bit of reflection, a little bit of shine, but not too much that it thinks it's overbearing. Okay, so the next bit is to then, now that we're happy with our render, we can sort of maybe adjust its position if we want to change the angle that we're looking at, and then we need to actually render out our image. Now, Cinema 4D has this preview pane that we can see. It's slightly grayer around the outside. If I kind of do that, you can see that these areas are slightly darker. This means that when we actually render out, we will only get the bit where it's actually nice and clear. So I just need to make sure that in that I'm not getting anything that I don't want, and that I'm getting the majority of my chess piece. What I might do is just shrink it so that it fits within those. You can obviously adjust these settings, and then maybe, you know, you can get the sizing that you want. Now, if I click on my render settings, I can now choose how big my output area is. So with output, you can see that I've got a width of 800 by 600. I've got a variety of things to choose from. So as I'm happy with the screen, but I think I want something slightly bigger. So 1280 by 1024. And you can see that it adjusts ever so slightly this view. And then I can sort of decide what do I do and do not want within these two borders. So I may zoom out a little bit more, but it might be easier to actually just shrink the chessboard itself. Okay, just need to go to my side views and make sure that it's still sitting on the floor. I wouldn't want it to be hovering above. No, it's still there. I'm quite happy. So now if I go back to my render settings, I can choose what I'm outputting, and I can choose where I save it. Okay, so make sure that we have a tick in the box that says that we are going to save, and then I can choose where I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it to my file, to my desktop in fact, and then I'm going to call that chessboard. Okay, and then you can choose what you want to output, so whether it's a TIFF or a JPEG, or if we're doing an animation we could use a QuickTime, but that makes me happy when it comes to sort of file size and that location. Okay, and then I go to anti-aliasing and I'm already set to best. Sometimes you might find that your is set to geometry. That's okay if you're doing a quick render, but really you want best if you want to be doing some good imagery. Okay, and really that's it. We've already got ambient occlusion and global illumination on. Okay, we make sure it's going to be rendered and then I can close that. There's no OK or anything, it's just saved automatically. And then if I come up here and I click render to picture viewer, it will render, it will bring up this new window. Oh, hello. Irradiance fast cannot be written. Right, reason for that is because we've used the light box. Okay, so when it produces those files, I just need to go in here. Okay, and I need to go to my global illumination cache and it will cache files and it will auto save. For the moment I'm just going to untick auto save, okay, and it shouldn't ask me again. So now if I just click that button again, boom, you can see that it's now going to sit and calculate my final image. Okay, so now we'll just sit and wait. Okay, there we go. So 3 minutes later, and we have our final render. Okay, so if I go to my desktop now, so just minimize Cinema 4D, you can see that I have my chessboard render there and my image is finished. Okay, so I noticed that the little bottom right hand corner there has a little bit of the light box in it, but that can be cropped out easily in any image editor. Well, I hope this tutorial has been helpful for you, and if you're new to Cinema 4D or just new to 3D in general, then it gives you a kind of a taste and a flavour for what it is that you can produce in a relatively short period of time. Okay, until next time, see you later.